Hello everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming to Asia Now. And I know that this week must be almost the busiest art week, so really we are very appreciative for your time and interest in Korean art. To celebrate the third edition of Asia Now, this year we chose Korean contemporary art as a focus. So we invited very emerging and at the same time well-established 12 Korean galleries, and at the same time prepared 3 special projects. And as a personally, I think that our project with this for the new light of Korean new media art, and at the same time collaboration with the Cannes Korean Art Management Service is a jewel of this year's Asia Now. Let me briefly introduce our panels, artists, and then 2 curators. When you pass the downstairs, there is a first exhibitions with the videos and installation and the black diagram. That is the exhibition of this 4 artists. So you will see the images, and so after we talk our talk, you can go down and take a look at the exhibitions more, and an artist will be there, so you can ask us freely of a question. That. The first artist I'd like to introduce is Kelvin Kyung Kun Park. Kelvin's work is the symphony of images of steel and irons. Our exhibition title is Nonsense Music. So this is a generation of artists, late 30 and early 40. We are the generation who had a vague memory about what has been happening in 1970s and 80s through our parents' generations. So our knowledge about what has been really happened in those days is not direct. It was more like impression of through our parents or personal memories, and also some feelings of what we had at the times. And these 4 artists had each one's unique approach using music to bring that moment to now. Because when we try to bring the moment to now, the memory is not about just the photographic or exact fact. It's about bringing that atmospheres, some feelings or the surroundings and what was there. Also, it has a bit of like unconscious part at the same time. So it will be interesting to you. And then Kelvin's work is actually like that, and he's really the visual symphony of you can see that he brought the old Asian image of the whales, and then also the steel and big cargo ship factories images, and at the same time what has been happened in 1970s and 80s in that factory at the same time. And let me introduce the second artist, Hong Beum. Hong Beum's approach to his personal memory about empty house and old house is a very poetic approach. He imagined some sound. He had to move around many places, so whenever he moved around to connect, to find the connection with the house, he imagined some images, and he imagined the sound, and then even his parents told him there was like a monster like that. So he put his memories of sound as a drawing first, and he used the drawing to make scores for a music box. So what you saw in this wooden beautiful the installation is a music box of his memories. And third artist, Lee Wan's. Lee Wan's film was presented in the Venice Biennale Korean Pavilion this year. It started from breakfast table. One day, Lee Wan got curious that what is this whole thing came from, what we are wearing, and then even slippers, and the rice, and the vegetables, and the rubber, and everything. So he decided to track to where it was made. So we are exhibiting the 2 films. The first one is a Cambodia series. He met the farmer, the rice farmer who made the rice he was eating. So he had like a talk with them. And then also just researched about how it was delivered to our table. And then the other film is made in Vietnam. Vietnam was just a special country for Korea because in 1970s and 80s, as of the part of a deal for getting the loan from U.S. We sent lots of also the troops and military to Vietnam. So there is lots of memories and still related the scenes in Vietnam. And he tracked that the rubber factory, how the rubber made there, and then it has been arrived at our table at the same time. And of course, there was the lots of similarity over what has happened in Korea, because in the 1970s and the 80s there were we had like a similar industry, rubber and also paper. But once the labor cost went up, whole the factory moved to another country in Asia. So that shows how it's been repeated in the history. It's so similar. The last, the artist is Ayoung Kim. Her works is started from her personal memory about father. His father was an engineer in Saudi Arabia, and then she has a personal memory of like stamp which has a construction scene and buildings in Saudi Arabia, and the postcard, and she has this artwork is studied from her personal memory, and she decided to use music to bring that memory to present. And very interesting part is that she saw that the lots of like according to the data and the number price of the oils whenever it goes up and down, how it has been influenced her life also directly at the times. So decided to use this data of oil to make music as scores. So it works that when you go down, you can hear the sound. It's a sound installation with a big diagram of data and then performance. So she used this data to make a background sound, and then also researched about real people who was living at the time. So got some text from diary and then articles, and made this one as a text. And then the actors and actresses, so they speak the text surrounded by sound, which is based on the data. So, and then as a last, and I'd like to introduce the curators. And Jaewon Chey is a curator, and actually he's the one who had made a debut of Kelvin's film in Korea. And he was the chief curator in the Art Center Nabi for a long time, which is the best and oldest media art center in Korea. And he's also lecturing at the Seoul National University. And our honorable guest, Odile, is she's a curator at the Musée d'Art Moderne de la Ville de Paris, and very personally also interested in the Korean media artists for a long, long time. So we are very lucky to have her today. And today's talk, so we will have a presentation from Kyung Kun Park and the Hong Beum and Lee Wan and Ayoung Kim one by one. End of their presentations, each curator will give an artist some comment or a question. And end of all four artist presentations, the two curators will have a brief discussion, and then we will pass the mic to audience. I know that it sounds a lot of things, so it's 1.5 hour talk, but I'm pretty sure that no one gets bored. It's amazing artists. I feel very thankful and lucky to invite them. And end of our talk, we prepared a little reception with the makgeolli, the Korean rice wine with some snacks. So hope this will be the enjoyable your evening and Saturday. Please give a warm applause to our artists and curators.
Hello. Hi, my name is Kelvin Kyung Kun Park. I have this kind of strange English name because my father was a diplomat and I lived abroad. And when I went to America, kids were making fun of my name, like King Kong Park. So at the time, this brand, Calvin Klein, was very fashionable. So I thought about taking that name, but it was a spelling mistake. So I think of, I tell this story to illustrate how I think of myself as an individual is some kind of a mistake. Anyway, so this is my first work, Cheonggyecheon Medley. I filmed this piece in this area in Seoul where the small factories still remain, and these factories were kind of the basis for these large corporations like Samsung and LG. That's where they copied all the Japanese and American machines, and some of these factories still remain. I'll show you a short trailer.
할아버지께. 난 지금 청계천에 와 있어요. 할아버지 공장이 있었던 곳. 아직 이곳 서울엔 그 어두운 굿절들의 자취들이 남아 있어. So when I was filming in this small district, it was a very strange feeling for me, because this is probably one of the few places in Seoul where the kind of traces or remains of 60s and 70s still remain. So you can see the layers of time. But in most areas of Seoul, it's all like redeveloped, and modern buildings are everywhere. So this, when I look at these kind of machines, I felt kind of a similar feeling I had towards my father, strangely. So this kind of a steel, very cold, very hot, and rusting, in a way, looking very weak. So I tried to film how I felt, because I was trained in the West. So no matter what I do, I keep copying what I learned in school, like in the 20s, the avant-garde films and things like that. So I really try to focus on my senses and try to be honest about how I feel, which was quite a challenge for me. So I made this kind of a five channel installation out of it, and each channel has a particular theme, and there are non-synced installation. So I made many variations in space like this, and I'm going very quickly. So the next piece I made is called Dream of Iron, and this piece I made while when I encountered this ancient petroglyph in the city of Ulsan, which is like a 4 hours south of Seoul, and there is a kind of a whale. There's an image of whale hunting, a petroglyph that is carved on the wall, and their estimated date is like 4000 BC. And it was this petroglyph is very interesting for me. I mean, in the Korean art textbook, this is considered the first art of Korea. And this image was very interesting for me because, to me, in this same town, they're building ships. So to me, somehow these images became the same. And what was interesting from an artist's point of view was that this image was made not during a hunter and gatherer stage as it is depicted, but it is made during the agricultural age. where the hunter and gathering age is over. So I thought that was very interesting conceptually as an artist because it was a documentary, kind of a documentary about the previous generation. There's some evidence to support this thesis because these carvings were, if you look very closely, they're carved with metals, which was not developed until the agricultural age. So I thought about more and more I do the research. So these whales and the ships had a similar story. Like when you caught the whale in the ancient days, it provided a basis for civilization, like tools, food, and trade, etc. And in the same way, in the 60s and 70s, Korea, these ships served to kind of feed the whole nation. So to me, they're kind of a similar beings or image. So I tried to make a kind of a digital petroglyph of our previous generation, of our father's generation. So you can see a kind of a single channel version of it downstairs. So, and then the next to, how much time we have? 5 minutes, okay, very quickly. So this piece is called 1.6 Second, and I filmed in Hyundai car factory, one of the largest car manufacturer. And they have, it's almost like 90% fully automated. They're made by robots. And what was interesting at the time when I was filming, there was a labor dispute between the company and the workers where the company wanted to make the machines 1.6 seconds faster. And this created a big labor dispute because the workers were feeling that this will jeopardize safety and production efficiency and etc. So this very slight time difference created this kind of political dispute. So, and what was interesting because when I visited the factory, it was in fact the people who looked like a machine and the robots looked like alive. And so I thought about that, I reflected upon that, and so I thought maybe I'm a very conservative, evil person. But in a way, I was feeling this way because I'm looking at the factory with a camera. So camera is actually a machine, and machine is has a bias towards itself. So it looks better on film. So actually people look kind of stupid and slow, and the machines look very live, and that's actually the case right now because the robots are fast to adapt to changes while workers are not. So I try to capture robots like they're alive. I mean robots like they're alive. I'll skip this one. And this is a piece I made about my experience in the Korean military. Oops. Sorry. So all the Korean men have to go to 2-year military service. And for me, this was quite, I would say, like a traumatic experience, because in there, like your individuality gets lost, and the whole point is to make us into like robots. So, but what's interesting is that when I went back to shoot the army, the kind of feeling I had was quite reversed. So when I was in the army, like that, I was one of those guys, and some feelings I had that was really difficult wasn't not so difficult when I looked from outside, and some like happy moments appeared very strange like a psycho, like this kind of North Korean. Yeah, so we look the same. So it's North Korea. Yeah. So I was one of them, like very happy to see the girls, and but yeah. So I made a piece about that. I will skip this one. So the continuing, actually this one you can see second floor, Choi and Lager Gallery booth. So this one I tried to make about like some kind of based on Korean drama, how sometimes Korean drama seem very frustrating. I always want the characters to take their will and say I love you, but they always have like, oh, but my father doesn't like this, and like, so I tried to make some kind of comedy, but something very serious comedy. And you can see this on the second floor, and oops. Okay. So this is my latest work. Yeah. So I was kind of sick of making digital work only, so I tried to make something physical. So this obviously resembles like the military, and when I first went into the military for like 6 hours, a few thousand men have to synchronize the salute. So it was kind of the process of making us into collective or robots that I tried to express somehow. It has a 2-channel video, like a surveillance camera, looking. Also, this is the control panel that controls. This is the brain of other bodies. And there's a camera that shows, like, if you're one of the audience, according to the sound of the gun, it flips into a camera, so the audience becomes part of the piece. So this is the video. Yeah, that's it. 1 minute. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey. In view of the work of Asian artists and Kyung Kun Park, most countries have experienced colonialism and modernization has been pursued in the process, and the part of the subject and the individuality is still ongoing. Park Kyung-kun was trying to present insights into the aesthetic of metals that have been subjected to industrial use in past time. 청계천 medley. About the petroglyphs that appear in the works displayed here, he says that he is a documentary of the times and says he is looking at the time of harvesting in agriculture. The era of industrialization is over in the artist's thought. It is the era of industrialization in the information age. This is a kind of digital petroglyph work moved vertically and horizontally, and the whale was transformed into a horizontal form of a steel plate in a vertical form. And in between these textures, iron temperature, color, motion sublime, then the story of death is unfolded. Most of the petroglyphs are the digital petroglyphs of Park Kyung-kun. The difference is between the collective viewpoint and the individual perspective. I am pleased to see his aesthetic way of guiding us to the dimension of new media, archaeological imagination through detail beyond the content and context. If archaeology was to dig our past graves, his media archaeological imagination, unlike our conception of liberalism toward utopia, is asking our present, the heritage to the future. This is my comment.
Yes, my point will be much lighter probably because what I'm interested in is the fact when I went to Seoul, 3 years ago, I was really shocked because of the way the city is functioning. It's so high technological developed, and when I watched your different films and the way you have been working, I was very touched because you are relating to personal memories. The first extract you showed was about your grandfather, and you wrote a letter to him. And the film which is shown here, you are starting from the point of a woman who, maybe you didn't mention it, but people will understand. There is the story of this woman who has lost her love, and she's looking for another over dimension, I would say. So she's looking for a kind of God, and you are putting some layers in your video, which is the layer of modernization through the iron, but also the whales that were, as you said, very important at that time because they were bringing at the same time food, grease for warming up, and also tools. And the other layers is the ship themselves. So what I connect to is the fact that the society is so high technological. You see people with mobiles all day long, everywhere, all the time, and this is very impressive. And at the same time, you are looking for the know-how, and you go to deep in the history to find that. So maybe I wanted just a little question, because you showed to us that you are doing films that are being shown in festivals, and at the same time you are doing installations of your work, and I know you also do photo, and I wanted to understand how you relate to the images in movement in the space. What is the way you show, if it's, you said you showed three screens, or we also saw an image where there were a lot of screens. How do you separate the images? What is your intention in that?
I think the core difference is the bodily relation to the image, and in particularly scale. So when you see a particular image in a space, in a particular scale, you have a very particular emotion. Compared to when I'm editing like a feature-length film, I'm more concerned about the time and the sequence. So I think, but I feel much freer in the kind of exhibition setting where I don't have to worry about narrative structures, and I can focus on image and the space and how sound. So you have a much more like a bodily experience.
Shall we do the second artist?
Hi, my name is Bumo. Actually, I'm very little bit nervous. Actually, I'm always nervous in front of saying things from people. And then, okay. I want to show, first of all, I want to show my drawing, because it's my old project is derived from the drawing. Anyway, actually, I think I usually made some archive, actually. Actually, I carefully observe the space and look for parts that I like, and I photograph in sketches such parts of the space that my perception has responded to. It's kind of heavy. So the notebook I carry around me is full of such sketches. One day, I began to wonder why certain parts impress me, why they remind me of certain memories or thoughts. So I started drawing a space of such a partial aspect, putting together bits and pieces. That is how my works called Unfair unfamiliar place was made. Linking the various parts of the structure together, I came to think that such a space that are somewhat familiar and yet actually unfamiliar have been in my unconsciousness all along. I learned that inside me are quite a lot of places, and that such a place of memory effect in the most unexpected ways. How I perceive a new space. So I became curious about the origin of these places. I thought that they are probably places I ran into at some point in the past. And in particular, that they start from the houses I lived in the past. Among the many houses, I recollected my memories of the house in Seoul, the house I lived the longest in my life. The video work I will show you next, the title of which is Video Work Visit, arises from the search trail of the dot. Actually, I will explain why showing the videos. With these works, I recollected the space I used to live in and restored that space. The space, but trying to avoid addressing two specific aspects of my personal memories, so that I could portray the sense of the images of the space itself through the structural transformation. I thought that video is a good medium to show the temporarily that the place has embraced over the long period of time. Actually, for example, this particular piece portrays the basement of the house. All the rest of the rooms of the house were on top of this basement space. It's a closed space, thus very quiet. You could hear all the sounds of the rooms in this basement. Actually, I very much like this place. Listening to the low voice of my family that comes from the other rooms, and the sounds of water flowing inside the pipes, and other indiscernible sounds from afar. I would let my imagination run, very active. Actually, you can see that the wave-shaped object. The wave-shaped object here conveys such various sounds. As such, I collect from my memory the structures that reminds me of the space, and add more objects that express such feelings or thoughts as I restore my version of the space. This work made me realize that memories of the certain space are constantly projected on other space and thus rediscovered. Just as a memory requires space of the past to hold on to it. A new place is embraced by an individual. They project their past memories and experience onto that new unfamiliar place. Actually, this video consists of 5 rooms video because that house consists of 5 rooms. So, beside this, I have some video main rooms, kitchen, and grandmom rooms and main rooms. So, yeah, I hope some chances to show my works in some future. Okay, next one. This is a kind of some installation scene, so like this. Actually, I prefer projecting that videos on the wall of the gallery on the space. That is kind of you can see there's some that works in the downstairs. But I skipped because you already explained about this. Okay. Next one is the scale of memories. I want to show this video, and while showing the videos, I will explain the concept. I draw out the closed space of the video and drawings into a separate space and materialized them into columns, the form of moving thought. I believe that memories form relationship with one another as they float around in the consciousness. This work conveys the layering and resonance of thought, imagination, or memories as they encounter one another and overlap. I focus on expressing the interference, relationship, tension, and relaxation between the memories, thought, and imagination. As these columns of almost 3 meters move around the space expands and the space becomes clustered. The situation of the space transforming according to the movements of the columns changes the empty space in a scale of various energies. They are like the pieces of puzzle of thoughts, memories, and imagination, but as they are pieces that do not fit, various gaps appear and disappear when the columns meet and overlap. The exhibition space naturally becomes the stage for such memories to roam around on. That is when I thought of town scale for the title. And at the base of the columns are device connected to the sensor that allows each column to dictate its one directional movement. Each column constantly moves around the given space in its own speed and rhythms. At the bottom of each column is a motor to which a music box is connected. Every time the column moves, the music box plays. As you can see, the music box runs through my punctual drawing. It's like some music box that is shown in the downstairs. I wanted to make the exhibition space into a scale of perception, my personal. The audience enters and experiences the scenery of my inner side. I will take time to show this video. There is some kind of 2 kinds of sounds. One sound is coming from the music box that is installed in the basement, and the other one is chime bells that is inside the pillar. That is connected to some sense. So actually, music box is worked while the motor is moving, and chime bell is connected to the sensor. So if the sensor is attached to the other columns, its chime bell is coming. So it's like a conversation between these columns. And I just found this kind of movement, the speed. Actually, in my works, I think the speed is very important things. So as you know, actually, the animation and the installation has a very slow. But I think as slow is like the time, the moment, the speed of the moment of in my childhood. Actually, so I prefer use just a very slow speed for making my installation. It's very hard. You can see, I like this part. Actually, it's some disappearing, appearing some between. There is some spaces, some disappearing, appearing. I like this. Thank you. My presentation is finished.
Throughout the industrialization time, Korea has the memory of the people leaving their hometowns or moving in the cities. There are memories of the neighborhoods where all the young people have been developed and transformed into completely different apartments, calling back and moving with friends who lived in one place, disappearing in the neighborhood itself and replacing neighborhood names with apartment brand names. What Hong Beum is working with in the memories, unconsciousness, fear, dreams, and slow time that have permeated the space. I talked with Hong Beum. Space should be with through the space, not just about the space. I hoped not to be stuffed in space, through space, but to be a memory that embraced other spaces, media, dreams, hybrid memories, and displacement. In the figure, it is a signaled mechanism through the device in sheet music, but excluding noise in a question. Dreams are discontinuous, and there are many times when they are not as clear as TVs that are fragmented or out of frequency.
My comment will be also about this situation of being a child and having memories that are kept for so long. And I was asking myself, because I saw one image that you did not show here, where there were piles of TVs, and each TV was showing a room or a house inside a house. So I was curious because, as you know, the artist Nam June Paik, who is Korean, he's, for us in Western countries, the inventor of video art. And of course, we all know also in our societies how so many Korean companies have been improving TV conceptions, because there are so many famous like Samsung or others. And I'm not doing any publicity here, but so this is interesting because you showed us first drawings, but then you showed us how you animate your drawings, and very slowly giving the time for creating a space, and also the space for the memory. So you give a shape, you give a time, you give a space to your thoughts and to your past in a way, but at the same time you are using today's ways of producing art in a way. And so this is interesting as a connection. So maybe could you explain this piece that you didn't, or maybe you have an image, I don't know, this pile of TVs. I was curious to understand. I'm sorry, maybe it's not nice to say that. So it was an installation with like maybe 10 TVs on top of each other, and each TV was showing a room, right? Yeah. So it was an accumulation of maybe all your houses where you've been living, I don't know.
This is my mistake, is to bring that the photographs of works. I think actually that is part of my archive of research the space. Actually, I just tried to find some space that is inspire me, and take a video or photograph and sketches. And then one day I just found there is so many videos. So I just got some idea, oh, that I can make it something. And then beside that, actually I usually drawing some drawings on my notebooks. And then I think there is this kind of partial illumination about the space, I think. So I just put this on my something illusion, and there are reverie images in that videos. Yeah, I think it's better to show my works than it's saying my works to you guys.
Please invite me to your museum.
Actually, the reason why I use classical TV, CRT TV, that we used in my childhood and when I was young, because CRT TV has some depth. It's like looks like an object. So I think that is this kind of have some meaning of the space, the concept of the place. That's why I use this. And then actually that TV is very old. So sometimes the TV is not working on the why the exhibition is gone. So some TV is gone, some TV is make some kind of twist. I like this. That is like my memories. Okay, some days I will show. Thank you.
Okay, shall we one, two,
This is one of my favorite. I wanted to deliver, and then even I was looking for vintage TV here in Paris to set up that, but in the end we decided to focus on the video, just films, and then wanted to have his works as installation to give a little contrast. But I agree with you. That piece has a very different layers and dimensions and the connections. It's bringing like old house to now, like you're looking at different house, peeping Tom kind of feeling. So, okay. You ready?
Hi. Before I explain about my artworks, I'd like to reply to talk about what I am interested in and what I try to focus on as an artist. As you are aware of, we live in a sophisticatedly designed world. Terms such as labor, exchange, creation of value, education, and development can be regarded as basic programs in a computer. Through these values, we have been fighting against the uncertainty of nature and the principle of the conservation of energy. We already have passed the period when we had to fight over how to distribute a limited amount of product. We are already entering the era of artificial intelligence and the fourth industrial revolution, that the machine replaces human labor and management. My concern is to which point should I, as an artist, focus on in this era. So let me explain a bit about my own artworks. These works are currently being exhibited at the Korean pavilion of the Venice Biennale. I wonder if anyone of you have already visited the pavilion and seen the works. Because the time is limited, today I'd like to focus on my maiden series that I have worked on for the past 5 years. In 2012, I decided to become a producer of all the raw ingredients that are necessary for the preparation of my daily breakfast meal. Many people wonder that why this project titled Made in started from a daily breakfast meal. Is because I think a single meal is the essential element of our living. Especially breakfast is the meal of the distant past in the day, and at the same time, it is the meal of immediate future like tomorrow. To survive in another world, to eat, human culture has been evolved and developed, but it also has brought about many conflicts. I'm interested in those kinds of survival methods. Even a single meal, human history is conditioned into it, and thought, and through this single meal, I can imagine what our future will be like. For this ongoing project, I have traveled to 10 different Asian countries where I participated as local laborers in producing a particular product such as rice, sugar or coffee. In addition, I researched each country's history and relationship to the particular product switch become parts of many breakfasts. This effort, along with the information produced by my investigations, are shared through the 12 different videos that are playing at the same time. Thank you.
I was very interested in Yuan's work by Venice Biennale, Mr. K and the collection of Korean history. While it was an extension of the Made in series, it was a work that could be done to meet Koreans who came to Korea dramatically, such as the impeachment of the president and candlelight vigils. Yuan's work is a Made in series that will travel to 12 countries in Asia and produce the country's symbolic product directly. On the Chinese side, for example, in the Made in series, the artist showed how he cut down a parquet floor of a 1,000-year-old monastery to make a wooden chopstick, and 1,000 years of history becomes a wooden chopstick to be consumed only as a meal. This is a representative theme that talks about the reality of Asia, where value and meaning are changing in neoliberal economic structure. It shows that post-colonial politics, economy, society, and culture are connected in the products we use every day. Eating the things to be produced in 12 countries means eating is linked to embodying. Yes. Thank you also.
I was also very impressed by this total involvement, because when you watch the video, you see Liwan, for example, driving a tractor and putting seeds in the soil. And for me, having the artist investing himself so much for so many years on a project, it's always very, very strong, because it's a total performing permanent attitude. And I think this way of showing how we are in a globalized world and how all what we are eating wherever we are, because in fact we can all relate to this research he's been making, makes us understand the world has so many different, at the same time, roots and roots in the food world, but it's touching everything. It's touching, of course, how we get dressed, how we move in the space. And maybe I have a small question, because I was wondering that I read that for Mr. Key installation, so it's the wall you could see at the beginning of his presentation, where there are a lot of articles about the whole history, in fact, of Korea, but it's touching, of course, the rest of the world, because all the conflicts or all the developments are intertwined. My question was, I read that you are collecting a lot of articles. How do you do that? Do you read them? Do you just classify them? Is it something you are thinking of, pondering about, or what is the use of this archive for the moment?
Can you hear Korean?
We all try.
Yeah. Okay. Please help me. 미스터 K의 작업 같은 경우에는 대략 한 1000점 정도의 수집물들이 벽에 붙어 있는데, 그거는 이제 한국의 어떤 정치와 권력에 관련된 수집물들입니다. 1900년대부터 지금까지.
For Mr. K installation, actually it's composed of 1,000 collections related to Korea's politics and power from 1900.
그리고 거기에 미스터 K라고 하는 한 인물의 인생이 담긴 사진들과 자료가 그 수집물들과 같은 시간대에 맞춰서 설치해놨습니다. 벽에다가.
And it's also composed of Mr. K's life-related photography and art documentations in parallel to other documentations we mentioned before.
근데 그 미스터 K의 사진들을 보면 아까 얘기하셨던 것처럼 그 수집물들에 있는 뉴스페이퍼나 혹은 그때 시대의 어떤 여러 가지 상황들과 그 인물들이 그 미스터 K가 연결되어져 있는 것을 알 수 있어요.
So what we see in the documentations related to the history of Korea is actually related as well to Mr. K's life.
그래서 미스터 K는 한 개인의 1930년부터 2010년대까지 한 사람의 인생이지만 그게 곧 한국의 역사와 연결되어져 있고, 그게 곧 아시아의 역사하고 연결되어져 있고, 그게 곧 당신과 나와 여러분들과 다 연결되어져 있습니다.
So Mr. K's life from 1930 to 2000 is actually related to first to Korean history, but then to Asian history, and then to the world history and all of us.
그리고 메이드 인 시리즈 작업도 마찬가지로 한 끼 아침 식사지만 아시아에서 아시아는 지금 전 세계 공장으로 이렇게 되어 있는데, 제가 아시아를 돌아다니면서 한 끼 아침 식사를 위해서 움직였지만 그게 곧 과거의 전 세계의 역사하고 우리 개인의 삶의 역사하고도 모두 연결되어져 있어요.
So it's actually the same thing with the Maiden series, especially when Asia is actually the world's factory. I made one breakfast meal moving to make all the process needed in Asia. This could be related to the world history at the end. All of us individually.
And does Mr. K stand for Mr. Korea? or not?
No. His family name is Kim, K-I-M. Thank you.
We are very on time. You can take it as much as you want. We actually we worried that
Yeah,
the last speaker always kind of
Yeah, we're in the final speaker always have to get all the burden to finish it really quickly, because most of the time the speakers are delaying the conversation. But great, thanks so much for making everything in time. So my name is Ayoung Kim, and I'd like to introduce 3 projects that I made in the last 3 years. But before showing my project, I would like to show you a special magic. Please open your eyes wide. Oh. That's not the magic. So this is a portable hall magic performed by Mathieu Riche, a French magician inspired by Acme Hall magic by Lloyd Barnes. There's this portable hall appearing and disappearing, enabling the things to penetrate through the hole. This is a credit for the magician. Here is the interesting thing. In various works of fiction, especially in cartoons, a portable hole is a device that can be used to contravene the laws of physics. It generally resembles a circular elastic patch, which is placed on the surface to create a hole. The user can crawl into the space or hide things inside it. This dimension-bending concept of portable hole, which can be seen as an ancient version of contemporary portal, is strongly connected to my approach to create narrative structures. The structures sometimes so much fragmented and mostly non-linear ones. So, what is the porosity? You know the term porosity, right? Porosity is a measure of the void or empty spaces in a material. This is a Grand Buddha statues at Bamiyan Valley in Afghanistan. In 2001, the Buddha statue was destroyed by the Islamic State attack. So porosity is everywhere. The valley became now very porous without the Grand Buddha statue. This is a cut from my project Porosity Valley Portable Halls, which I made in 2017 this year. Porosity Valley Portable Halls is a commissioned project from Melbourne Festival in 2017 in Australia, and was co-produced by Centre d'Art Contemporain Bretigny in France and Ilmin Museum of Art Korea. Here I attempted to integrate the notion of porosity with my ongoing interest in the subterranean geology, the migration issues, as a speculative narrative. This is a trailer of the video. Oh, right. This is a big mistake.
On the cloud, beyond the border, oceanic magic solution. There's a great deal on the border. Planning your epic journey from platform A to B, it's important to keep yourself protected.
Tetragenitrix from Porosity Valley, date of birth unknown, gender not applicable. Welcome to the Immigration Data Center.
Much residual elimination may occur in the transfer this time.
Millions of units of information form a blueprint to replicate and reconstruct your shelter in Porosity Valley, in the same way that nature itself might have constructed the valley.
There has been multiplication of the event.
this project revolves around the notions of porosity, of subterranean geology, narrative structure, and compound system of data. It deals with physical migration and data migration at the same time, adapting apparatuses like plot holes and portable holes as active catalysts. What you see in the screen is actual Australian subterranean geology, which was detected by a special method called seismic reflection survey. The seismic reflection survey is quite similar to ultrasonic scanning because the seismic layers and strata are invisible to our eyes. The specialists use certain kind of explosions, and the sound waves reach to the layers of different elements, and it comes back to the surface of the detector. And then this sound data becomes images. So what you see in the image is generated out of sound. This transition is quite interesting. So petrogenetics is in fact a term related to an ancient Persian mythology, not mythology, religion called Mithraism. There's a god of sun called Mithra, and petrogenetics is a rock, a mother rock or fertility rock, from where the Mithra god was born from. So in this video, I put this protagonist's name as petrogenetics to remind this goddess-like entity who actually made a successful migration from Persia to Roman Empire in the ancient time. A still cut from Porosity Valley portable holes. Here I overlaid images of geological Porosity Valley and the Valley of Towers of data storages. This explains my perspective to gaze at the dissimilar types of valleys at the same time. Also, this connects to my idea dealing with the physical migration through geological borders and the data migration through the fiber optic cables at the same time. Petrogenetics is having an interview with the gatekeeper to go through the successful migration process, as most of the refugees do. This mural wallpaper mural is called Petrogenetics versus Petrogenetics. Some images from the installation. The next project I'm going to introduce is called In This Special, We Shall Be Kept. It's a performance piece, and you can watch this video or recorded video from the first floor at the Choi and Lager Gallery booth. This project was created last year when I was in a residency at Palais de Tokyo Art Center, and at the time this museum, Palais de Tokyo, made a kind of collaborative contract with Opéra National de Paris, Paris Opera team, especially the ballet team, and each artist at the Palais de Tokyo could make a collaborative performance piece at the Palais Garnier in June, in collaboration with one specific choreographer from the National Opera de Paris and the ballet dancers from the company. So it was a very specific and special and prestigious experience for me. But at the same time, it was a very hard experience in terms of approaching to this gigantic and magnificent, majestic building, which was quite different from the spaces that I've been mostly exhibiting or performing. When I started the research about this structure, because the performance venue has to be one of the spaces in the public space, not the auditorium itself. And I found quite interesting fact, well-known fact actually, that the underneath of the Opéra National de Paris building, there is an underground lake still existing, which used to be the source and subject for the famous novel Phantom of the Opera. So this is where the artificial lake is existing, and when the architectural team dig in the ground underground, they couldn't stop a kind of sudden flood, which was caused by the heating of the Seine River, branch of the Seine River, and they decided to deter the water and kept the water as a water tank in a way. This is old footage from the artificial lake, and what I found very interesting is the surface of those structure, the bricks and everything was covered with pitch. You know, the pitch, the sticky type of petroleum, the bitumen, to make those space waterproof enough. And well, you're gonna see my previous project a few minutes later. I've been working a lot on petroleum, history of petroleum, as well as its symptom as a miraculous substance which mediated 20th century's modernity. And this my interest about petroleum connected to this space, underneath space directly. This 3D simulation of the lake. The actual lake looks like this. Project, what I wanted to do is to bring, to connect the ancient Great Flood mythology, which is well known as Noah's Ark, and that Noah built up this gigantic vessel and saved the human race in biblical mythology or biblical record. But at the same time, this same story of Noah's Ark is written in Islamic Quran and as well as Mesopotamian version of Epic of Gilgamesh. So three very different geological ancient tablets are describing this Great Flood mythology in the almost identical manner. And the Epic of Gilgamesh is actually describing the incident the most clearly, the most detailed thing. And it describes that how those people brought the petroleum and pitch to cover the vessel so that the vessel could survive as a waterproofed object. And this is an exhibition version of the performance. I had an occasion to make the project as an exhibition in Palais de Tokyo last year. So this is describing the more about the project, showing supplementary images and diagrams. So this diagram shows the structure of Palais Garnier as well as structure of the ark, the vessel. So this is, in a way, my viewpoint to look at contemporary catastrophes about capsize of boats and shipwrecks. So much happening in these days for the refugees and not only the refugees, but also there was a huge catastrophe and tragedy happened in South Korea 3 years ago about the ferry shipwreck, and this caused a lot of political turmoil in South Korea, in fact. So this was to look at contemporary disasters rather than only bringing the ancient mythology to the contemporary space. So this was exhibited in 6-channel sound installation in Palais de Tokyo. In fact, I'm taking the most time, rather than hurrying to finish it quickly. So this is the final work. Elizabeth Whale from the Hanging Gardens to You Shall, a third version. The title is quite strange. It's illogical. It's not grammatically correct one. And this title is in fact generated through an algorithmic device that I conjured up with a programmer. This approach to create algorithmic device to generate certain libretto to this musical performance piece is a kind of key tactic, key strategy of this project. The whole project is dealing with the history of petroleum and how this first and the second oil shocks influenced the modernity, and how the rise of oil price influenced all over the world, especially the South Korean modernization was hugely impacted by the fact. And during the 70s and 80s, many Korean construction companies as well as architectural companies went to the Middle East to earn oil money to support their families and to support industries in South Korea. And my father also used to work in the Middle East for 10 years. As you see, a lot of archival images related to South Korea and the Middle East. It was quite a widespread symptom at the time, but it only lasted 10 years because the labor price became high after the 10 years. So it was to look at my own family history as well as to see how this miraculous substance, the petroleum, influenced the world economy as well as world politics. Some archival images. My father. So this became a 40-minute musical piece. I call it a part epic sound drama as well as music theater. And there are 7 voice choir members singing chorus and music things, shouting and chanting things. And at the same time, there are a lot of narrations and voice acting of the actors. And 40-minute sound installation and diagram, but there were some occasional voice performances, which are excerpted versions. A diagram. In fact, this piece is downstairs, so you can watch it in the video, actually, and you can hear the sound. Well, it's a little bit pity that this is supposed to be 6-channel sound installation, but here, because of the space, I exhibited in only a stereo sound in a smaller volume. So, this is it.
Kim's work in this exhibition is given the keyword of oil shock, oil dollars, but it's not only understood by narrative and algorithm for modernity. It is related to the hyper object, and it is not a single narrative as a self going to divide from one. Algorithms are fragmented, are arranged. The artist's father also worked in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait at the time regarding oil dollars. In fact, in Korea, this work was often quoted from a modernity standpoint. It seems to me that the composition of algorithms, the Bible motif and Noah's Ark, the musical experience and the 6-channel sound, and the composition of the 14 chapters reveals the surface, not the essence. revealing the global economic signs that each region node has a dynamic and organic relationship, or an algorithm and a meta-analysis of unique neoliberal tendencies of ASEAN modernity. Still, there remains a question about the way in which these collective algorithms map objectively. Noah's Ark was intensively collective in the world, but in the end, the question of whether one individual, Noah, left the space of intercourse with a god through a one cubic pathway on the ceiling does not matter the subjectively of an individual before this construction. Yes. This is my comment.
I was interested also by this personal story that you have put in your works, and the fact that also being invited to be resident in Palais de Tokyo and producing a work linked to the specific spaces you were invited to work with, like the Palais Garnier with this lake. And it makes me think about all the hidden and not so well-known places or histories. What you've been working with is putting some silent or hidden places or moments and putting them in light, and having a construction with the sound, with the music, with chorus sometimes, and dealing also with the dance. And I really enjoy this all-together moments that you create, which are really a performance, I think, by themselves. And that it's too bad we could not watch here the video of the concert. I call it concert. I don't know how you call it, but I think that if you have the time really to read the words, because it comes from different memories, from different people you've been working with, and it's really at the same time personal and universal, and it gives such a strong impact. I have also a small question for you, because the last piece you've been showing us, but which was the first one actually that you produced for the Melbourne Festival in Australia. For me, you are moving forward towards something very contemporary, because you are dealing with new technology at the same time, and also new questions, even if it's migration, as you say, which is the question of borders, and this is also in Noah's story, actually, the question of living somewhere and surviving. But how do you work with these new technological questions?
First of all, I think I need to describe a little bit about my previous practice for the last 7 or 8 years. In serial project, I dealt with mostly about this process of my modernization, and especially how the South Korean modernity used to be like, and in the global sphere, how it can be seen from the outer space. Because I became quite curious about this process, because while I was studying in the UK in the last decade, I got to know that contemporary art is something germinated by the modernization process, and in a way, there could be some counter opinion, but for me, I quite strongly believe that contemporary art is a European invention, European modern invention. So to understand contemporary art, I had to understand modernity, and especially South Korean modernization process, which was not so happy and bright thing. So I made several projects sticking to those questions, but the subjects are all different. Something was about British invasion of tiny little island of South Korea. They gained nothing at all, so it was a kind of tragic comedy for them. And the other project I dealt with the expansion of railway system, how this railway delivered ideology and capitalism and money and currency and time, the time which became evenful to everywhere now. And well, several other projects. And after doing this, I get to understand the modernity quite well, and I enjoyed it enough. And well, I thought that it's time to move on for myself and to see the contemporary now then. And yes, for that project, Porosity Valley portable halls, I tried to acquire and employ a lot of really new high-tech things, 3D modeling, 3D animations, and voice modification of vocoder effects. Well, I love working on the voices, and this was quite electronic version compared to my previous ones. Well, it's a speculative fiction. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. Well, I'm taking the most benefit of the final honor.
I think it's getting a little bit also cold.
Yeah, sure. The drinking is waiting, so please keep the seat for a while. So, it's a speculative fiction, speculative narrative that I tested quite eagerly because I believe that it's not science fiction, it's speculative fiction. I believe that speculative fiction is something can be most critical to look at contemporary issues and contemporary problems. So it was spontaneous to acquire those technology to follow up these narrative structures. Thanks.
Thank you.
So time to drink.
Oh, for sure. Yes, yes. Thank you. And would you like to ask any questions each other, or to the audience? Would you like to have any questions? Yeah, I think everyone wants to drink. I understand. You know, we are Koreans. So. Okay, please give a warm applause to our